Chapter 69, Parole Prep, 1993. As 1994 approached, I was preparing to see the parole board. Because convicts ran the school programs, certificates could be purchased for cash or packs of cigarettes, so I took over 25 certificates into the parole board. I acquired 10 on my own, including my GED, and purchased the rest. I also took many letters of recommendations. I was lucky because I was in the state system, Lawton, and none of my dozens of disciplinary reports followed me from the federal system. At the time, they didn't have cameras everywhere and they weren't using computers for our records. So the parole board knew that having the negative reports removed was possible. Especially since convicts worked in the counselors and the warden's offices also. For a carton of cigarettes, I was able to have all my other DRs removed from my jacket and brought straight to me to be destroyed. It was good that my jacket was clean as a whistle, but it was also a double-edged sword that put us in a dilemma. Anyone with a clean jacket after 5 years in prison was automatically looked upon as manipulating the system, especially a 22-year-old. They believed if we didn't get into any trouble, we had become better criminals, so a parole set-off would be justified. But they also believed that if we did get into trouble, a parole set-off was also justified. It was a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. Stay in a lot of trouble, get punished for it. Stay out of trouble and still get punished for it. The purchase of accomplishments was the only way to balance it because total rehabilitation was implausible according to them. While sitting in front of the parole examiner, he expressed concern about granting parole because of my initial charges, the allegations that I shot at an officer, and also that he felt I would eventually be killed or charged with murder. At the time, DC's murder rate was on par with a country at war. DC was considered the murder capital of America with 80.6 murders per 100,000 residents, making it the highest murder rate in America's history. DC was also just coming off a record year of homicides, 454. He expressed concern about me being connected with some Jamaican posses in Jamaica, America, and Europe. Jamaican's notoriety was also at its apex after Hollywood released a film in 1990 called Marked for Death, which depicted a dread by the name of Screwface as a ruthless killer who targeted a cop's family. He was pursued and beheaded in Jamaica by the white cop, which created resentment amongst Jamaicans. Screwface also had a twin brother. This film created a lot of concern for me. Also 9 years prior, on May 13th, 1985, the American government in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania dropped a bomb on the home of the members of an organization called MOVE. Members of MOVE all wore dreadlocks and espoused back to Africa views similar to Rastafarians like my parents were. The bombing killed 6 children and 5 adults. It also burnt down 65 houses, leaving 250 people homeless. All the remaining members of the organization were imprisoned. The negativity the media pushed against the MOVE victims also helped to form negative opinions against Rastafarians and Jamaicans in general. I had to be aware of these factors before seeing the parole board. I knew the examiner couldn't base his decisions on his opinion, but only on their guidelines, unless he had substantial evidence of other crimes committed. So he had to take into consideration that I had an innumerable amount of accomplishments since my incarceration. I was granted parole. Chapter 71, Home, June 1994. I sold hundreds of pounds of weed, owned luxury cars, owned properties, wore expensive clothes and jewelry, used high-powered weapons, shot numerous people and got shot at numerous times before my 17th birthday. I had been in one of the most notorious prisons in America, Lawton. I had been in numerous federal prisons across America from Virginia to Oregon. I had been involved in numerous altercations. I had beaten a KKK leader. I punished a few racists, a mobster, a few snitches. I tried acid. I saw prison escapes. I saw female officers having sex with prisoners. I saw male officers having sex with female prisoners. I broke out of prison to have sex with female prisoners. I saw men rape other men. I met cartel bosses, mafia figures, lawyers, stockbrokers, Native Americans, gang leaders, West Coast and Midwest gangbangers, hitmen, bank robbers, fraudsters. I've been on prison airplanes numerous times, all before my 23rd birthday. Now I was finally home. All of my homeboys and homegirls were my age, 23, 22, 20, 24, but none had the life experiences that I had. They were all intrigued by my stories, but they were all still in the same mind frame. I swore to never return to hustling unless the Colombians, through Sophia, or the Cubans from my time in Colorado, or the Jamaicans reached out to me with a deal I couldn't refuse. I knew the end result. I saw Ratful Edmonds and his crew get sentenced to life. I saw the R Street crew get picked up on RICO charges and sentenced to life. I saw the Newton Street crew get picked up on CCE charges and sentenced to life. I knew many of these young men, so I knew my fate if I took that path once again. I knew the feds didn't play fair when they were out to get you. While I was in prison in Oregon, there was a Navy SEAL on the compound that was serving a life sentence for killing his family. He always said he was innocent and was set up by some senators that he had dirt on. His case made it to the Supreme Court and it was sent back to the appeals court for a review. He had a chance at freedom. One day the officers came and took his cellmate to the hole. No one knew why. He was an old white dude that had been in prison for over 20 years and never bothered anyone, so it didn't make any sense. The next day, the Navy SEAL got a new cellmate. No one thought anything of it, but he did. He was suspicious and stayed in the cell as much as he could. He didn't even leave out to eat. After a few weeks, the new cellmate was walking up the compound towards the metal detectors. Everyone was in line emptying their pockets, and while emptying his ID fell onto the ground. The convict behind him picked it up to pass it to him. He took a look at it because it wasn't the normal IDs the convicts carried. It was different. A closer look revealed that he was an FBI agent. Other convicts began looking at the ID as he walked through the metal detector. He looked up and saw everyone looking at him and a guy with his ID in his hand. He checked his pockets and then froze up once he realized they had it. His cover was blown. The cops by the metal detectors immediately escorted him off the compound. It was also a Mexican on the compound that told me the feds dressed up as firefighters, got assigned to a fire truck, and then got someone to light a fire on the side of his house. Once they arrived, the fire gave them probable cause to enter into his house to put out the fire. They then claimed to see guns in plain view, which allowed them to get a search warrant from a judge to search the house. They then recovered a lot of contraband and used it to convict him. He was sentenced to 40 years. These two incidents opened my eyes like nothing else. An agent was posing as a convict to get information from another convict, even risking his life. An agent starting a fire, then posing as firefighters to get into your home. The feds were nothing to play with.